सुदीप्ति गुप्ता जी.
Yes, yes, I'm trying to change my name. Just a second.
Just le- just leave the meeting and again join with the name as the team code or speaker 1 and speaker 2.
Excuse me, sir.
Yes.
Sir, I changed my name, but it's showing that it will take time to show up everywhere.
No, it is showing. TC 547 speaker 1.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Check audio. Hi, can you hear Mr. Chabla?
Yes. Yes.
He's clear?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
All right. You want to test audio?
It's okay.
Okay, great.
Good morning, everyone. Myself Lakshana Pratap Singh, acting court master. With the prior permission of the honorable judges, I may start with the introduction of the judges and then we'll start the proceedings.
Yes, Lakshay, you may go ahead.
Today on the bench we have Mr. Rajendra Chhabra sir. Rajendra Chhabra sir is a practicing advocate from past more than 23 years in the field of criminal law. Sir is also on the panel of Delhi High Court Legal Services Committee Division Bench, DLSA, Delhi Police, Delhi Government. And we also have Mr. Rohit Madan sir. Sir is practicing from past 23 years in the field of banking law, tax law, arbitration law, etc. Sir has done his LLB from Delhi University and LLM from New York University School of Law. Sir is also on the panel of Government of Delhi. Sir has been a senior standing counsel, Income Tax Department, and is currently on the panel of State Bank of India. Sir has also worked with the law firms in New York and has also worked with the International Tax Department of Prince Waterhouse Coopers, New York office, before joining Madan Associates.
Thank you, Lakshay, for giving such an elaborated introduction of both of us.
Right, my lord.
No need for that. Thank you, anyhow.
With the permission of the honorable judges, I may ask team 547 to start with the prosecution arguments. And prior and telling the division of the time they want for speaker 1 and speaker 2 and for rebuttal. I request everybody to just open their chat box all the times and the camera and mute when other person is speaking.
The council seeks permission to start the proceedings.
Yes, you may. Please.
Much obliged, Your Lordship. May it please the court, the council is appearing on behalf of the prosecution in the present matter. The council seeks permission to address the bench collectively as Your Lordship and individually as Your Ladyship and as Your Lordship.
Granted.
Much obliged, Your Lordship. We are approaching this honorable court invoking its jurisdiction under Section 13, Clause 1 of National Investigation Agency Act 2008, which clearly states that notwithstanding anything in the code, every scheduled offence investigated by the agency shall be tried only by the special court within whose local jurisdiction it was committed. If Your Lordship are satisfied with the statement of jurisdiction and are well versed with the facts, the council seeks permission to move ahead with the statement of charges.
Please.
Please
Much
tell your
obliged, Your
time
Lordship.
division.
Yes, sir, I'm about to come there. The council will be dealing with issue 1 and 3 for 19 minutes, and my co-counsel will be dealing with issue 2 for 10 minutes, reserving 1 minute for rebuttal.
Okay.
Both the accused has been charged under section 120B, 489B, 489C of IPC and section 16, 17, 18 and 20 of UAPA Act. If Your Lordships are well versed with the statement of charges, the council seeks permission to move ahead with the statement of with the arguments advanced.
I'll ask you to please go through the issue 1 once again to refresh us. What is the issue 1?
The issue 1 is whether the investigation was carried out efficiently.
Yeah, please.
Much obliged, Your Lordship. It is humbly submitted to this honorable court that the investigation carried out was efficient enough to convict the accused through the facts and circumstances laid in the present case. It is certain that the accused are guilty for the commission of crime. It is humbly submitted that there was no inefficiency in carrying out the investigation. It is humbly submitted that the investigation in the case was lawfully conducted by the authorities without causing any prejudice to the accused. The investigation was free, fair, and judicious. The Code of Criminal Procedure, Section 2, Clause 8 states that investigation includes all the proceedings under this code for the collection of evidence conducted by a police officer or by any person other than a magistrate who is authorized by a magistrate in this behalf. Similarly, in the instant case, all the evidence were collected with due procedure by the investigation officers. In the case of S.M. Datta versus State of Gujarat, it was held that in normal circumstances, the court should not interfere in the investigation done by the investigation team. In the case of Mithilesh Kumar Singh versus State of Rajasthan, it was held that proper investigation is to bring out the truth to light, so justice is not only done at the stage of the investigation, but also at the stage of the trial. Furthermore, in the case of Siddhartha Vashisht versus State, it was held that the power to investigate is solely vested with the investigation officer, that how investigation is to be done. Therefore, Your Lordship, Without a reasonable doubt, the correct process of investigation for a cognizable offence was followed by the investigation team in the instant matter. Your Lordship, now coming down to the question whether the confession made by the accused in the police custody is admissible or not, the counsel on behalf of the prosecution would humbly like to submit that the confession made by the accused in the police custody is admissible under Section 27 of Evidence Act. In the case of State of Maharashtra versus Damu Gopinath Shinde, it was held that Section 27 is called as doctrine of confirmation by the subsequent events because every part of the statement made at the instance of the accused in a police custody should necessarily be confirmed by the subsequent events of discovery to make it admissible in the court. Similarly, in the instant matter, both the accused Samir and Monu confessed their crime during the police custody and revealed that they received FICNs from Kalu Mama that they received the fake currency from Kalu Mama in Malda, West Bengal, to deliver it to Peter for the purpose of bomb blast. They further revealed that they had received such consignments for carrying FICNs in past as well. The statement of the accused was confirmed by the discovery of call record details which clearly mentioned their frequent telephonic conversation with Kalu Mama and Peter. The call record details also clearly established their few trips to West Bengal in the year 2014 and 15. Furthermore, telephonic contact between Peter and Kalu Mama on 23rd Feb 2015 proved their association with the criminal conspiracy. Now, the council would like to draw the attention of your lordships to the fact number 17.30 and 17.31 of the charge sheet, where it is clearly mentioned that the Kalu Mama during police custody revealed that this deal of carrying FICNs was supposed to materialize in the first week of February 2015, and for the same purpose, Samir and Monu visited West Bengal. But due to arrest of Iqbal Khan, who is a Kalu's Mama close friend, the deal could not materialize. This incriminating statement of the accused was confirmed by the call record details analysis, which shows Samir's presence in the West Bengal on 5th Feb 2015. CDR analysis of mobile number also shows that Monu mobile was switched off from 3rd Feb 2015 till 7th Feb 2015, which indicates that he had cleverly switched off his mobile phone while on trip to West Bengal. Your Lordship, the doctrine of this section is founded on the principle that if any fact is discovered in a search made on the strength of any information from a prisoner or an accused, such a discovery is guarantee that the information supplied by the prisoner is true. It is quite possible that the content of the custodial statement could directly lead to subsequent discovery of relevant facts rather than their discovery through independent means. Hence, such statement could also be described as those which furnish a link of chain of evidence needed for successful prosecution, as held in the case of Selvi versus State of Karnataka. In the instant case, Samir and Kalu Mama both have revealed that the main conspirator, that is Sohail Khan, was in touch with Lashkar-e-Taiba, and Kalu Mama further revealed that Sohail Khan crossed the border at night and went to Bangladesh on 20th June 2015. This statement led to the discovery of the relevant fact that on 20th June 2015, Sohail was seen in the morning with one unknown person along with Kalu Mama in Kalichak village, Malda. In case of Rumi Bora Datta versus State of Assam, it was held that information might be confessional or non-inculpatory in nature, but if it results in discovery of a fact, it becomes a reliable information. In the instant case, prosecution witness 2, that is Iqbal Khan, stated that in January 2015, Samir informed him about a public gathering in which Kalu Mama made some blatant remark like India not being a country worth living and country of intolerance, दुल्हन को सजाना पड़ेगा. On the other hand, Monu during police custody informed that Kalu Mama had received instruction from Pakistan and Bangladesh with the blast force, दुल्हन को सजाने का वक्त आ गया है, and to blast as soon as they hear this code. Therefore, these two facts clearly indicate their involvement in this entire criminal conspiracy. Therefore, the confession made by the accused in police custody is admissible under Section 27 of the Indian Evidence Act, as all the three accused, that is Samir, Monu, and Kalu Mama, during police custody gave relevant pieces of information which led to discovery of facts. It Your Lordship are well versed with issue 1. The Council seeks permission to move ahead with issue 3. Your Lordship, you're not audible.
What is the stage on which you are arguing before the court? Is it on the framing of charge or what? Because just now we have received the charge sheet under section 173.
Yes, sir. I was the first issue. Indeed, Your Lordship, the first issue was about whether the
I do understand that the first issue, but my question is what is the stage on which your argument are being addressed? Is it the stage of the framing of charge? Are you aware of this? Because we have just been given the charge sheet under section 173.
sir,
Your arguments on what point? What stage?
Your Lordship, we are arguing on the stage that the accused should be held liable on the charges that has been framed in the charge sheet.
No, no, because right now only the charge sheet has been given. The charges are yet to be framed. Anyhow, you please carry on with the second issue.
Indeed, Your Lordship. Issue 3 deals with the fact whether the accused are guilty under section 16, 17, 18, and 20 of UAPA Act as amended by the Act 35 of 2008. It is humbly submitted before the Honorable Court that the accused are guilty under the said section of UAPA Act. It is humbly submitted before this Honorable Court that as per section 15 of UAPA Act, an act to damage the monetary stability of India by way of production or smuggling or circulation of high quality counterfeit Indian paper currency, coin, or other material will constitute terrorist act. In the instant case, the FICN seized from the accused was said to be high quality FICN notes by CFSL, New Delhi, and also under Section 6, Clause 3, and under Section 6, Clause 4, Clause 1 of the Investigation of High Quality Counterfeit Indian Currency Offences Rule 2013. In fact, Your Lordships, above all, the counsel on behalf of the accused have themselves clearly admitted the guilt of the accused in their memorial and stated that as per the charge sheet submitted in the case, the respondent was guilty of offence committed inter alia under Section 15 of the Act of 1967, which is punishable under Section 16 of the Act. Section 17 of UAPA 1967 clearly mentions that whoever in India or in a foreign country directly or indirectly raises or collects funds or provides funds to any person or persons or attempt to provide funds to any person or persons, knowing that such funds are likely to be used by such person or persons to commit a terrorist act, notwithstanding whether such funds were actually used or not for commission of such act, shall be punishable with imprisonment for a term which shall not be less than 5 years, but which may extend to imprisonment for life or shall also be liable to fine. Therefore, Your Lordship, mere knowledge of the fact that the FICNs were likely to be used for a terrorist act is sufficient to prove the accused guilty under this section. And with the help of their statement made during the custodial integration, clubbed with CDR analysis, witness statements, and other material evidence, it has been without a reasonable doubt proven that the accused at least had the knowledge about the entire terrorist act. My learned counsels also seem to agree with this contention as they have clearly stated in their memorials that in the pertinent case it has been clearly given that the organization of the accused had been involved in the bomb blast as well as in the process they get funds from Pakistan and Bangladesh for use. This clearly makes the accused liable under Section 17 of UAPA Act. Therefore, Lordship, the counsel on behalf of the accused themselves are agreeing that the accused are guilty. Section 18 of UAPA 1967 states that whoever conspires or attempts to commit or advocates, abates, advises, or incites or knowingly facilitates the commission of a terrorist act or any act preparatory to the commission of terrorist act shall be punishable with the imprisonment for terms which shall not be less than 5 years, but which may extend to imprisonment for life and shall also be liable to fine. Your Lordship, here again, mere knowledge is sufficient to prove the guilt. Therefore, all accused conspired knowingly to facilitate the commission of a terrorist act and have carried out an act preparatory to the commission of terrorist act, thus held guilty and convicted of the offence. The counsel on behalf of the accused have also stated in their memorial that the accused are guilty under this section beyond any reasonable doubt. Therefore, Your Lordship, there is no point arguing on the same since the counsel on behalf of the accused themselves have admitted the crime of the accused in their memorial. Lastly, Section 20 of UAPA 1967 states that punishment for being a member of terrorist gang or organization, that is any person who is a member of a terrorist gang or a terrorist organization which is involved in a terrorist act, shall be punishable with imprisonment for a term which may extend to life imprisonment or shall also be liable to fine. Section 2, Clause L of UAPA states that terrorist gang means any organization involved in terrorist acts. Your Lordship, as rightly pointed out in the memorial by the counsel on behalf of the accused, that all accused acted as a member of terrorist gang involving and facilitating in the commission of a terrorist activity are convicted for the offence punishable under Section 20 of UAPA. It can be said from the fact that accused act indicates active involvement of them in bomb blast that was supposed to be carried out on 15th August 2015. The acts of the accused were to facilitate the death of Indian Army convoy in Pulwama, Jammu and Kashmir. Therefore, it is humbly contended before this honorable court that since the required essentials are met to constitute the crime, and above all, the counsel on behalf of the accused have themselves admitted that the accused are guilty. Therefore, beyond any reasonable doubt, the accused are guilty under the mentioned section. If Your Lordship are satisfied with the issue 3, the counsel seeks permission to call upon my co-counsel for issue 3. Your Lordship, you're not audible.
Ms. Prosecutor, did you receive the necessary sanction for levying the charges in the UAPA under Section 45(1) of the Act? Have you received that sanction from the competent authority?
Yes, sir.
Who is the competent authority and where it is annexed in your memo, in your charge sheet? Can you point out the charge sheet page where it is this sanction is there from the competent authority? Because you can't simply charge under the person UAPA without the competent section from the competent authority.
Sir, the order of district magistrate as well as the notification from central government stated that the accused can be there could be a trial on the accused under UAPA.
Good. Carry on.
If your Lordship are satisfied with issue 3, the counsel seeks permission to call upon my co-counsel to move ahead with issue 2.
Please carry on.
Much obliged, Your Lordship.
Your Lordship, issue 2 deals with the question whether the accused are guilty under section 120B, 489B and 489C of the Indian Penal Code 1860. It is humbly contended before this honorable court that the accused are guilty under section 120B, 489B and 489C of the Indian Penal Code 1860. Section 120B of the Indian Penal Code states that whoever is a party to a criminal conspiracy to commit an offence is punishable with death or imprisonment for a year or 2 years or upwards shall be punished in the same manner as if he had abetted such an offence. Whoever is a party to a criminal conspiracy other than a criminal conspiracy to commit an offence shall be punished with imprisonment of either description for a term exceeding 6 months or with fine or both. It is humbly contended that the accused are guilty under section 120B as they had assessed all the ingredients under the mentioned section. Firstly, the fake Indian currency notes were in possession of the accused. Secondly, the accused revealed the fact that the fake Indian currency notes of rupees 5 lakh, which were to be delivered in Pulwama, Jammu and Kashmir, were to be utilized for bomb blasts on the Indian Army convoy on 15th of August 2015. During the interrogation process, Samir and Monu admitted the fact that they both used to receive consignments of the fake Indian currency notes from Kalu from Malda, and there they used to receive 10% commission on each deal. Furthermore, the accused Kalu Mama revealed the entire criminal conspiracy during the interrogation process. Also, the analysis of the CDRs and the data of the seized phone calls of the accused reveal that clearly reflect the frequent telephonic conversation between Kalu Mama and Samir and Peter and Kalu Mama. These mentioned facts clearly indicate their involvement in the process and prove their association with the criminal conspiracy. In Firozuddin, Bashiruddin and others versus State of Kerala, it was held that each one of the conspirators must have actively participated in the commission of the offence or were involved in it from start to end. If there is a combination by the agreement which may be an express or implied or in part implied, then they are considered to be a party to the conspiracy. The facts of the instant case clearly indicate the involvement of the accused in the criminal conspiracy and thus satisfy the criteria mentioned in Section 120B. Further, Section 489B of the Indian Penal Code 1860 states that whoever sells, buys, or receives from any other person or otherwise traffics forged or counterfeit currency note or bank note, knowing or having reason to believe the same to be forged or counterfeit, shall be punished with imprisonment of life or with imprisonment of either description for a term which may extend to 10 years and also be held liable to pay fine. Section 489C of the Indian Penal Code 1860 states that the possession or that whoever has in his possession any forged or counterfeit and intending to use the same as genuine or shall be punished with imprisonment of either description for a term which may extend to 7 years or with fine or with both. The very first essential of both the mentioned sections is that the note in question is a currency note or bank note and the accused was in possession of the same. As stated in the charge sheet, 250 high quality fake Indian currency notes of rupees 2000 denomination having face value equivalent to rupees 5 lakh were discovered from a black color bag of accused Samir, and the same were discovered from a maroon color bag of accused Monu. The second important ingredient is that such notes were forged and counterfeited. During the investigation process, in the instant matter, the seized fake Indian currency notes were sent to the CBI New Delhi for expert examination. They gave the confirmation that the seized fake Indian currency notes were counterfeited and also held the opinion that the fake Indian currency notes were of high quality. The third important ingredient is that the accused knew or had reasons to believe that the note to be false and intended to use the same as genuine or for trafficking. Section 27 of the Indian Evidence Act 1872 states about how much of the information received from the accused may be proved. It states that when any fact is deposed to or as discovered in consequence of information received from a person accused of any offence in the custody of a police officer, so much of such information, whether it amounts to confession or not, relates distinctly to the fact thereby discovered may be proved. Under Section 27 of the Indian Evidence Act 1872, the accused confessed their guilt, admitted that they used to receive 10% of the commission on each deal, and revealed the fact that the fake Indian currency notes which they were carrying were to be delivered in Pulwama, Jammu and Kashmir, and were to be utilized for bomb blast on the Indian Army convoy on 15th of August 2015. Furthermore, it has been held by the court that possession of large number of counterfeit currency notes may itself justify drawing up for the presumption that the intention of the accused was to use them as genuine or that they may be used as genuine with the meaning of Section 489C of the Indian Penal Code 1860. Referring to 106 of the Section 106 of the Indian Evidence Act, if the fact is specially within the knowledge of any person, the burden of proving the fact is upon him. Therefore, it is upon the defense to prove as to why the fake currency notes were in their possession. In fact, the defense itself has admitted in their memorial that the accused were carrying the counterfeit notes and also has admitted the guilt of the accused. Therefore, it is respectfully contended that the accused are guilty under Section 120B, 489B and 489C of the Indian Penal Code 1860. The acts of the accused do fall under the mentioned criteria. The discovery of the facts itself therefore substantiates the truth about the criminal conspiracy, and the accused should be convicted and held guilty. If your lordship have no further queries and are satisfied with issue 2, the council now seeks permission to move ahead with the prayer. Your lordship, you are not audible.
Learned Counsel, how have you related the mobile which has been found in possession of Kallu alias Mama? Is there anything on record with the prosecution to prove that this mobile actually belonged to the Kallu Mama?
Your lordship, during the interrogation process, the mobile phones of the accused were seized, and proper investigation was carried out. And from the given facts, it was stated, it was indicated that Kalu Mama was involved in the criminal conspiracy. He even revealed the entire criminal conspiracy during the interrogation process.
Learned prosecutor, my limited question is this only. Did you put anything on the record to prove that the phone number which is alleged to be of Kallu alias Mama is actually of him?
Indeed, your lordship. Yes, the phone calls. The phone was actually of Kalu Mama. It was the entire interrogation process was carried out very efficiently, and it was proved that the phone was actually of him.
Any document on the record in the charge sheet which proves it actually, not the presumptions? If you are aware of, it's okay. You may go ahead to the other issue.
Indeed, your lordship, the council.
And Learned Counsel, I would just like to.
Yes, Mr. Madan.
Learned Counsel, I would like to ask you one question also. This is in corroboration with my learned brother who just raised few points. The relevance of those questions which Mr. Chabra just raised actually is that in criminal case, the standard of proof is beyond reasonable doubt. And therefore, to bring on records relevant facts is very pertinent to this case.
Indeed, your lordship, can you please pardon the question put forth by the bench?
Sorry?
Indeed, your lordship, can you please pardon the question put forth?
Yes, the question actually is that as far as criminal... Yeah, go ahead.
Please
go ahead,
carry
Mr.
on. Carry on.
Yeah, so the relevance of the questions of Mr. Chabra actually relate to also the standard of proof in a criminal case. And if counsel can actually elaborate as far as the standard of proof is concerned in a criminal case, because all the facts will relate to that, and the conviction of also of the accused will relate to that. Can you please elaborate on the standard of proof in a criminal case, please?
Indeed, your lordship. Section 106 of the Indian Evidence Act states that when a person does an act with some intention, which character and circumstances of the act suggest, the burden of proving the intention is upon him. If your lordship are satisfied with issue 2, the council now seeks permission to move ahead with the prayer.
Please make your prayer.
Much obliged, your lordship.
Ms. Prosecutor, please go ahead with your prayer.
Much obliged, your lordship. Wherefore, in the light of the issues raised and arguments advanced and authorities cited, may this honorable court be pleased to adjudge, hold, and declare that the accused are guilty, and pass any other order it may deem fit in the interest of justice, equity, and good conscience, all of which is most humbly and respectfully submitted.
That's all?
Yes, your lordship.
My co-brother wanted to ask anything?
Thank you for your presentation.
Now I'll ask Postmaster ji, is it the right time to ask the other party on behalf of the accused to submit their?
Yes,
They can continue?
yes, my lord. Yes, my yes, my lord.
Your Lordship, Your Lordship, your,
Yeah,
your,
please.
Your Lordship, the question that was put forth to my co-counsel, can I answer that question regarding that?
You are referring to the bench statement?
Yes, Your Lordship, if you
Yes.
permit.
Yeah, please.
Your Lordship, in the charge sheet, we have attached Annexure L, where all the documents and electronic device from Kalu Mama has been properly seized in the presence of independent witness, which shows that all the captured documents and mobile phone and the number belongs to Kalu Mama. In fact, the account number that has been seized, the phone number that was used in the particular account was same which was used by Kalu Mama for constant telephonic conversation with Samir and Monu. In fact, CDR analysis the same annexion has been attached in the charge sheet, which shows that the phone number belongs to Kalu Mama.
Okay.
Much obliged, Your Lordship.
Thanks for your presentation. Now, the counsel for the defense on behalf of the accused person may start their presentation. Who is going to speak first?
Team 554, you may start with the defense arguments. And first mention the time division. You Team
You are not
5541,
audible.
speaker 1, you are not audible.
You're not audible, counsel. Mr. Counsel, you're not audible. Is he audible to all others?
No, sir, he is not audible. No, you are not.
Excuse me, sir, there is some network issue of the council. Can he start from my
The second counsel may advance the argument in case the first counsel is having some technical problem. In the meanwhile, the second counsel may advance her arguments.
Okay, sir. Very well, sir.
In the meanwhile, I'll request counsel number 1 to kindly identify the problem and address the argument soon after the argument of the speaker number 2 is concluded.
Good morning, Lordship, my Lordship. The council seeks permission to advance the argument because there's some network issue. My co-counsel, Speaker 1, was facing some issues. The council seeks permission to advance the arguments, my
Sure,
Lord.
you may. But before you,
Much obliged.
counsel for the defense, I would like to ask one thing. The written arguments which are presented before us
Yes,
were,
my Lordship.
were prepared by yourself only? I mean, you both the counsels? The counsel for
Yes,
the defense?
yes,
I
my
fail to
Lordship.
understand the very submission and averments made in those written arguments, written submission before the court itself admit to the guilt of the accused persons. How come this?
My Lordship, please
You are
pardon.
supposed to be the counsel for the defense, so you have to make a rebuttal to the charges which has been leveled by the prosecution. Rather, you are supporting by simply admitting and submitting the same thing in tune of the prosecution. Have you gone through the written submission which you have prepared and submitted before this court? You have not made
Yes,
any rebuttal to the charges and allegations which are leveled by the prosecution. You are rather supporting them. Was it intentionally or it was just a mistake?
it was just a mistake, my
Then you
Lordship.
just carry on with your arguments.
Much obliged. I'm dealing with the issue second, whether the transfer of investigation to NIA is lawful or not. It is humbly submitted to the
Please,
Honorable Court in the beginning of the
please
investigation.
mention the time division.
Uh, the speaker one takes 10 minutes for their argument, and speaker two takes 19 minutes for advanced arguments.
You also seek liberty
1
to
minute for
withdraw the.
rebuttal.
You also seek liberty to withdraw the written submission which are before this honorable court, because those submissions are indicating towards you are being guilty. So you withdraw those arguments and then submit your arguments.
Okay, my lord. Thank you.
Please.
It is humbly submitted before the court that in the beginning of the investigation, the special cell charge accused under section 120B, 489B, 489C, 121, 123, and 201 of IPC. But when the investigation transferred to the NIA, they placed UAP section as well against the accused. IPC section pressed against the accused. As per section 120B of IPC, deals with the punishment of criminal conspiracy. Section 120B of IPC makes punishable an act of a person who is party to a criminal conspiracy to commit an offense. IPC defines criminal conspiracy to mean where two or more persons agree to do or cause to be done an illegal act. My lord, the facts are that petitioner don't know about the bags contain FICN, so how they can be the part of a criminal conspiracy when there is no knowledge? There is only one agreement between them. They have to transfer back for commission. There is no agreement for committing something illegal. As per section 489B, it is a penal provision for selling to or buying or receiving from other person or otherwise trafficking in use or using as genuine any forged or counterfeit currency, note or banknote, knowing or having reason to believe the same to be forged and counterfeit. In the present case, petitioner don't know and believe that those notes were FICNs. They were just following orders because they need money, in spite that they had no intention to do something illegal. So far as section 489C of IPC is concerned, it is a penal provision. Any forged or counterfeit currency note or bank note, knowing or having reason to believe the same to be forged or counterfeited, and intending to use the same as genuine or that it may be used as genuine. My lord, in case of Bishu Rajan versus State of Tripura 2019 SCC online trial 200, court held that mere possession of counterfeit currency notes sufficient to prove commission of offence punishable under section 489C. Further, there was no evidence against the accused except the possession of the so-called counterfeit currencies. As stated above, petitioners only have the possession of counterfeit currencies without knowledge about them. Acts of appellant constitute waging war against the government. As per section 121, whoever wage war against the government or attempt to wage war or abates the waging of such war shall be punished with death and imprisonment for life. To constitute an offence under section 121 of IPC, no specific number of persons is necessary and the manner in which they are occupied or armed is not material. The true criteria is quo animo, with what mind and intent did the gathering assemble. The object of gathering must be attained by force and violence, an object of general public nature, thereby striking directly against the government authority. No evidence clearly intentions of petitioner. There is only assumptions made by the police that they are going to use FICNs for terrorist act. No armed material, any message or any other thing found by the police and NIA. All the charges based on the assumptions and nothing else. As per section 123, whoever an act or by an illegal omission conceals the existence of a design to wage war against the government, intending or by such concealment to facilitate or knowing is it likely to be such concealment with facilitate the waging war of such war. The waging of such war shall be punished with imprisonment or either description of for a term of which may extend to 10 years. The object of this section is to ensure that the information should not be withheld from the police who are take proper steps for the suppression of such crime or to being the offender or to book. In the present case, no exact planning or design was found, and the intention was also not clear because the main accused was absconding and the plan also goes with him. Transfer of investigation to NIA is lawful or not? In investigation, NIA do not found any explosive materials or any type of weapons. They found only some memory cards, SIM cards, and bank account details of them. And those things which was found by NIA is not enough for specific evidence. The base of putting charges of UAPA against the appellant was that NIA captured FICNs from them and their statement which was recorded by police. But appellant don't know about the FNCNs. They were just transferring the bag for their commission. The statement which was recorded by the police was unnatural and against the human behavior because no person accepts that type of big crime without defending them. The statement was recorded under pressure of police. My lord, in the case of Lahu Kamlakar Patel 2013 6 SCC 417 426 para 26, court stated that there cannot be uniformity in human reaction. While the said principle has to be kept in mind, it also to be borne in mind that if the conduct of the witness is so unnatural and it is not in accord with the acceptable human behavior allowing variations, then his testimony becomes questionable and is likely to be discarded. In the case of Ram Lakshman versus State of UP, reported in 1991 as CRLJ 2790, witnesses were declared hostile and cross-examination by the prosecution. Only their statement made before the magistrate under Section 164 Code of Criminal Procedure were put to them. They had stated that they had given this statement on the asking of the police. It was not their voluntary statements. In that case, as allegedly statement of the accused himself was thought to be relied upon the unqualified admission of the sustaining conviction. If the counsel is satisfied with the issue, counsel seeks permission to allow to present issue number 3. Your Lordship, you are not audible.
If my co-brother has any queries, any questions to the council.
Mr. Counsel, Ms. Counsel, actually, can you please explain to us how, as far as the knowledge aspect is concerned, can you just point out to 2 relevant facts which point towards the knowledge as far as this aspect is concerned, that they did this crime which was not intentional and the sections which are being invoked here are not attracted?
Your Lordship, the intention was not clear because no one can read mind and what the intention comes in the minds of the accused. But the statements which was recorded by the NIA and police was not their voluntary statement because they was under the pressure of the police. And the NIA, those evidences which was found by NIA is not clearly stated that accused are guilty for UAPA because there are no record of call records, SIM cards, and bank accounts attached with the charge sheet.
Ms. Counsel, one more question. How do you relate Evidence Act Section 27? There has been recoveries after their statement. Moreover, the burden of proof as per Section 106 of the Evidence Act, once there is an element of the knowledge which stands proved by virtue of Section 27 of the Evidence Act, is on the accused. If we take this for granted, then every accused will come before this court and say he has no knowledge. And ignorance of the law is no excuse. That's a settled proposition.
Your Lordship, the burden to prove the fact asserted on the prosecution. Whoever claims a legal right before the court depending upon the existence of certain facts that he asserts and prays to the court give a judgment in his favor, must prove the facts and hence owns the burden of proof.
What about Section 106 of the Evidence Act? That shifts the burden. But if even after the statement there has been some discoveries of the new facts based on their statement, that is duly covered in Section 27 of the Evidence Act.
Your
Very
Lordship,
relevant actually,
the,
because discoveries have been.
Your Lordship,
Yes,
the
please.
statement which are used for the evidence is not they're voluntary because the main culprit, main conspirator was missing and absconding. He was absconding and
Miss Counsel, the moment you say Mr. Sohail, if you are referring to the name of the Mr. Sohail, who is the main conspirator, the moment you admit that he is the main accused, then your link as per the CDR stands established. There has been a number of the time when the conversation is being taken place with all these three people. Not only this, the conversation particularly between the Sohail and Peter, who later on committed, who is gone absconding, is also a question which you have to clarify before this court. Just by referring that the statement was made under pressure is not going to be of any help to you. You have to prove it. The moment they were arrested, there has been a back history of their conversation with the main accused Sohail Khan and the Kalu Mama.
Your Lordship, there is no past records regarding their any
Involvement in
actions.
this. So, do we say that nobody commit the offense for the first time? Is this the reference we should take?
No, Your Lordship.
Any other speaker, one may start. You have concluded your part. Let him submit.
Hello, am I audible?
What is the issue you are going to address before this honorable court?
First of all, I'm so sorry for the network issues that happened before.
Please speak a bit louder.
Hello.
Please speak a bit louder. Huh?
My lord, I'm going to represent the issue whether the accused is guilty of UPA.
Whether the accused is guilty under?
Guilty of UPA.
Okay.
Please
UAPA.
explain what is UPA. Please give us the full form. We don't understand these abbreviations.
Sir, my lord, under section 3 of Unlawful Prevention Act.
My co-brother has asked you to give this acronym UPA's full form. What does the act say? What is the name of the act?
Unlawful Prevention Act 1967.
Unlawful Activity Prevention Act. It's not, if that is the word you used, Unlawful Prevention Act, then this will become UPA, not UPA. So always use the full
Counsel
form.
seeks forgiveness, counsel.
Carry on.
My lord, it's humbly contending that the provision contained in Unlawful Activity Act, especially under section 16, 17, and 1820, through the present impugned law, is totally contravention to settle position of law that the prior to passing to the impugned law, UAPA Act 1967, right? It's above section authority only categorizing of organizations as terrorist organization, but after coming into forces of impugned law, the same being extended as an individual as well. It is submitted that it is necessary to draw a clear line of distinction between unilateral categorization of an individual as a terrorist, because it carries with itself for more prolonged consequences the application of an individual's liberty and dignity. My lord, absence of motive. The motive behind the crime is a relevant fact on which evidence can be given. The petitioner clearly stated in their statement that they don't know that the bag they are transferring contains FICNs, which was being used for bomb blast, and they have no idea that the use of FICNs that carried out only money for the 10% commission for the same. In criminal trials, suspension, no matter how long, can and must be permitted to take place of proof. This is for the reason that the mental distance between maybe and must be. It is quite large and divided weight conjectures from sure conclusion. It is imperative to note here that the accused come from a good family background, is a well-educated and employed person with no previous criminal records. My lord, common object is different from common intention. Presence in a terrorist organization cannot render a person liable unless there was a common object, and he was acquitted that by that common object. Object must be to constitute offense and prior concert or common meeting of mind. Common object is to be gathered from the act and language of the member opposing it. My lord, the Unlawful Activity Prevention Act 1967 put regional restriction over the freedom of speech and expression. The reasonability of restriction over any fundamental right depends upon the nature of the right to be infringed and nature of the interest sought to be protected. The Unlawful Activity Prevention Act, the law to infringe is the right to freedom of speech and expression, and the main objective is to maintain social peace and order. There is nothing in Article 19 which permits that state can abridge this right on the ground of conferring benefits upon the public in general or upon a section of public. It is upon the state to curtail or infringe the freedom of speech and expression of an individual to promote the general welfare of a section or a group of people. In Govind versus State of MP, Supreme Court was called upon to decide the constitutionality of a Madhya Pradesh police regulation provides for domiciliary visits and for shadowing the movement for hardened animals. Supreme Court upheld the validity of regulation thus said. My lord, UPA section 16, 17, 18 and 20. As per section 16, if act has resulted in the death of any person, be punishable with death or imprisonment for life, and also be liable for fine. As per the above point, in the present case, there was no terrorist act occurred on the basis of assumptions. We cannot predict if someone is terrorist or try to do a terrorist act. My lord, section 17, punishment for raising funds for terrorist act. Whoever in India or in foreign country directly or indirectly raises or provides funds to collect funds or collects funds, whether from a legitimate or illegitimate source, knowing that funds are likely to be used in full or in part by such person or persons or by terrorist organization or by terrorist gang or by an individual terrorist to commit a terrorist act. The conspiracy to raise funds as a terrorist gang to facilitate the commission of a terrorist activity and are thus convicted from the offense for the offense punishable under section 17 of Unlawful Activity Prevention Act. This statement was stated in the State versus Basir Ahmed Ponu and others, 2014 Supreme Court case. My lord, all the petitioner has no past record that they do not have any transaction multiple times to facilitate the crime, to facilitate the commission of terrorist activity. They were not engaged in any unlawful groups, no material evidence found against them. My lord, section 18, punishment for conspiracy. Whoever conspire or accept, commit, advocate, abet, advise, or the commission of a terrorist act, or any preparatory to the commission of terrorist act, shall punishable with imprisonment for a term which shall be not be less than 5 years or may be extended. My lord, as per section 18, it is not necessary that a person intend to aid a terrorist act. It would be sufficient proof for imposing penalties under section 18. If the prosecution is able to prove that accused person has the knowledge that his act or omission would facilitate the commission of terrorist act. The main factor of section is knowledge, whether the person has knowledge about them or not, and it was not proved that by the evidence that they have proper knowledge about the plan or any other thing. The evidence which was present by NIA are not proper and not enough for providing that they are trying to do an terrorist activity. No material evidence can describe the thing which was in the mind of petitioners, so they only have assumption. My lord, section 20, punishment for being member of terrorist act or organization. Any person who is member of terrorist gang or terrorist organization which involved in terrorist act shall be punishable with imprisonment. My lord, so the whole scenario say that the allegedly accused have no intention and no specific evidence against them. They have no knowledge, they have no past records, and they are not in the organization or association. This directly linked to terrorist organization. That's all, my lord.
How do you explain this receiving of 10% commission for carrying the currency notes?
My lord, the allegedly accused Samir and Monu stated in his statement that they are only transferring the money for the 10% commission.
My question remains same. In 2015, we have enough means of the transfer of the money. Okay. Now for transferring the currency note, which you say that they were not, fake currency note was not in their knowledge, and they are being offered a sum of 10% of the commission, which otherwise comes to around 0.001 when we transfer it to any bank. So doesn't that raise a presumption on the part of the accused person that they were aware of this fact, even the very fact which has come in their statement that they had bought this total sum of 10 lakhs rupees of the fake currency note for a sum of 3.5 lakhs rupees? How do you explain that?
My lord, the allegedly accused Samir and Monu are doing all this for some need for some money because they are not that financially strong. So all this, they are transferring the money only for.
Speaker, Learned Counsel, my question is this only. This raised a question on their integrity and their conduct. Now the gold is being sold in a market at a rate of 45,000 rupees per 10 grams. Now someone is offering it to you to sell it for 30,000 rupees. Either it can be fake or spurious, or this can be the stolen material. Just give me a valid reason. You have made so many tall claims that they were not aware of anything. Everything which is being alleged by the prosecution is up in the air. So please substantiate your argument with any fact or the evidence. Is there anything on the record which
forgiveness for?
Sorry?
You are not audible, my lord.
I'm not audible. Am I audible to all others?
Yes, you're audible to me. You're audible to me.
Anyhow, you please conclude.
And Mr. Counsel, you have to point out one fact or few facts which actually break the chain of the entire facts which lead to the negation of guilt of the accused. Now you have to, you are representing the defense team. Now, as far as the defense is concerned, they have to basically show what factors or what facts are relevant to show that to negate the defense of to negate the guilt of the accused. Please point out few relevant facts so that we are very clear on this aspect.
My lord, my client Sameer and Monu already stated in his statement that they are doing all these transactions only for some 10% commission, which was they are all already do all these transactions before also.
Mr. Counsel, your co-counsel has just stated the statement which was given in the section 161 of the CRPC, or the confession which was taken by the accused was under the pressure of the NIA. So should we take it also along with that? This statement was also given under the pressure of NIA, or was it admissible? Or you say the part of the statement which was of their confession can be admitted and part of the confession cannot be admitted? Can we split the confession?
My lord,
My lord,
on the behalf of my counsel, I want to answer this question.
Please.
Much obliged. The statement which was given to the police was, they are not voluntary statement, but the statement which was given to the NIA was
Which is
there.
also an investigating agency. The confession is there only. NIA is also a police by special act.
The statement which was given into the charge sheet, mentioned in the charge sheet, in the whole
Statement in charge sheet is a reproduction of the statement, confession statement, which is given to the police or NIA. They don't add up anything while presenting the report in the section 173 CRPC. It is a reproduction which is annexed with the CRPC 173 statement. See, either you say the whole of the statement, which is confession statement, it has been taken under the pressure of the police, but you have not explained to us the post the statement there has been the further discoveries of the fact under section 27. Is it there? You have not pointed out anything on that. It's your case, you have to be very clear, because the prosecution has been able to establish its case so far as the arguments are concerned. So you have to make it very clear what are the major points, what are the major facts, rebuttal you are relying upon. Of course, which are on the record, not mere submissions. You have not stated anything on the fact of the case?
My lord.
Merely reiterating the judgments is not going to help you out. We have to relate those judgments along with the fact of the case also, how they are related to the fact of the case. You have not elaborated on the CDR, you have not elaborated on the recovery, the method of recovery, the presence of the independent witness, etc. We would like to hear you, like if the time permits, we would like to hear you on those aspects also, which has simply not been looked upon by you. Being a defense counsel is your duty. How do you break, as my co-brother has asked, how do you break the link, the chain of the prosecution allegations? You have not brought out even a single fact which breaks the chain of the allegation which has been presented by the prosecution. Bring on record, show us to us.
The evidences, my lord, the evidences which was submitted by the NIA is not present in the charge sheet, like their mobile data, the messages which was sent to each other, the call details. There's nothing
CDR is there,
submitted
CDR
in.
is there, CDR is there. CDR is a part of the charge sheet. The whole detail has been given.
Yes, my lord.
Achha, even if it is not there, does it mean the absence of the criminal conspiracy between them?
There is no direct connection.
It's not necessary, there is no overt act is necessary to establish the offenses under 120B. The law is very clear on that. It's settled law. The actual participation is not necessary.
The
It may be the mere meeting of the minds.
meeting of minds, my lord, meeting of minds, but there is a exception that all the accused are not on the same page. They don't know about the whole plan. The plan
Is
only.
it necessary? Is it necessary, Miss Counsel, to know about the whole plan? To be a part? We are not saying he was the main conspirator. We are saying to be the part of the conspiracy. Is it necessary to be the part of the whole? Like he should be in knowledge of the whole plan.
No, my
He was
lord.
executing. He was executing the particular task which was given to him. That was of the transportation of the fake currency notes to the terrorists in the Kashmir, Pulwama, so that they could carry out the blast.
My lord, all the accused.
Yes. You please give me one argument along with the substantial evidence or with the some support of the evidence on the record which proves that they were not aware of the fact that they are carrying the fake currency notes. And also cite two of the arguments on the fact of the case. Anyhow, Miss Prosecutor, I would like to ask you one thing. They are alleging it that it was
Yes,
not
my
in
lord.
their knowledge whatever they are carrying out is a fake currency note. They were mere the carrier and they were simply carrying the notes and they were not aware of it. How do you explain it? Speaker number
My
one.
lord, counsel would seek permission to refresh some memories with my researcher.
Sorry?
Counsel will seek.
In the meanwhile, you just please let my query is to the prosecutor one. So let her answer this. Am I audible?
Indeed, Your Lordship. Your Lordship, the knowledge has the knowledge was proved without beyond reasonable doubt with the help of the CDR analysis, their own confession under Section 27 of the Evidence Act. Secondly, there were sketches which were prepared on the basis of information given by Kalu Mama of the place where the entire exchange of FICN took place. Secondly, there were many witnesses who confirmed, like Shaurukh Khan. Shaurukh Khan is a witness who confirmed that he saw Kalu Mama with Sohail Khan on 20th May. So therefore, the statements made by the witness.
Miss Prosecutor, just because one villager has seen Sohail Khan with Kalu Mama, what does it establish?
Your Lordship,
Because he has not spoken anything about the conversation which has taken place between. He is referring only to the fact that he has seen Kalu Mama with Sohail Khan, and Sohail Khan has not been apprehended as yet.
Your Lordship, not only on the basis of Shaurukh Khan witness, even other witnesses like Guddu, who informed about the FCN note that through secret sources that there has been FCN notes that are being carried in Farakka Express. Secondly, Your Lordship, the confession itself is a very incriminating evidence.
Miss Counsel, the defense is saying the confession has been forcibly taken by them. And so far as Section 27 of the Evidence Act is concerned, post taking the confession, there has not been any further discoveries of the fact. If after taking the confession, there would have led to discovery of some more currency notes, only then Section 27 is attracted. Whatever was received from them, that was when they were apprehended. So this could have been the argument of the defense team that it was planted upon them. The special cell or NIA is already having so many fake currency notes at their disposal, so they have planted upon them. Because after this, see, when Section 27 is attracted, once your statement is taken, post that statement, there are the further discoveries of the fact. After their statement, If that could have led to discovery of or recovery of some more fake currency notes, then Section 27 would have been attracted.
Your Lordship, their statements were what they said in their confession, that
This is my question to you. They are saying that confession was not voluntary. It was taken under duress by the police.
Indeed, Your Lordship, and for the same section, Evidence Act 27 is taken as an exception to Evidence Act 25 and 26, where if after the confession relevant discoveries are made, then the particular confession is admissible in the court.
Okay, agreed. Now, what is the relevant discovery which has been made post the confession? Please
Your Lordship,
specify that.
Your Lordship,
Mainly the recovery of some SIM cards. That is a further discovery you should have pointed out. After the confession, which led to the discovery of few SIM cards.
Your Lordship, the Kalu Mama revealed the fact that they were this entire consignment was supposed to be held on the first week of February, and for the same, they both, Samir and Monu, traveled to West Bengal. But due to arrest of Iqbal Khan, the consignment could not take place. And the relevant fact we established was through CDR we established that both Samir and Monu traveled to West Bengal at that particular time. In fact, Iqbal Khan was also arrested at that time. Subsequently, the confession made by Monu and Samir stated that they used to take consign. They have also held a consignment in past as well, and therefore the CDR proves that in the year 2014 also they have visited West Bengal frequently.
This is all part of the confession. Now, the another question which the counsel for the defense has raised is this: all these currency notes were of very high quality. So why should not this court believe that they were not aware of the fact that all these notes are genuine Indian currency notes? Because in your statement also, it has come in your statement under Section 173 CRPC, it has come the fake currency Indian notes were of very high quality. So how come an ordinary person come to know whether they are the fake and spurious or the genuine? Anyhow.
Indeed, Your Lordship, during the investigation process of the instant matter, the seized FICNs were sent to the CBI at New Delhi and for the expert examination. And they gave the confirmation.
CBI is not the concerned competent authority to give the expertise on the genuineness of the notes. It is the CFSL. Was it sent to CFSL?
Indeed, Your Lordship, it was written, it has been stated that the FICNs were sent to the CFSL CBI at New Delhi and for the expert examination. And they gave the confirmation that the seized fake Indian currency notes were counterfeited and also held the opinion that they were of high quality.
And this is exactly my question. Why this court should not believe on the statement of the counsel for the defense? Because it has come into the investigation by CFSL that with the naked eyes examination is very difficult to point out whether they are spurious or not.
Indeed, Your Lordship, Section 45 to 51 under the Indian Evidence Act 1872 provides the relevancy of the opinion of the person which is an expert. And an expert...
That is admitted, that is accepted. But the question is, to a common traveler, my question is to a common person who has been given the notes to just to carry it. So why should not we believe on the statement that mens rea was not there? They were not aware of the fact that these are the fake currency notes.
Your Lordship, the counsel on behalf of the prosecution is fighting on this basis that they were aware of the criminal conspiracy and they were aware and they had the knowledge that this particular FICN will be utilized for a bomb blast at Indian Army convoy. Therefore, it it is very much reasonable to assume that they knew that it was of high quality, as it was being used for a terrorist activity such as bomb blast on an Indian army convoy.
But that is also a presumption because no bomb blast has taken till the date when they were arrested. It is only the confession they have made.
Indeed, Your Lordship, the prosecution is substantiating all the claims on the basis of.
Yes, my co-brother wanted to ask
I would
something.
just like to add one more thing to Mr. I just would like to add one more thing, which just to elucidate with what Mr. Chavra just mentioned. The offense of conspiracy is a substantive law, correct? And therefore, it renders the mere agreement to commit an offense punishable even if no offense takes place pursuant to the legal agreement, correct? So in this case, even though the blast has not taken place,
But the
right,
meeting
the
of mind was
offense or under 120B,
stands established. That's true.
yes.
So prosecutor should take more care in preparing the charge sheet, and the prosecutor should have always stated that this was very much evident from the chats and the CDR. That they are all actively engaged in the conspiracy, which further led to the blast at Pulwama, which would have led to the blast at Pulwama, but because of this preventive action of the special secret information and apprehension by the special cell, this could have not taken place. Anyhow. So, Court Master Sahab, what is next for us?
My Lordship, the council seeks permission for the conclusion and the prayer.
I think the prayers. Yeah, please carry on.
All the above issues shows that the NIA has a lack of evidence, and that's why there was some imaginary scenarios in assessing evidence. Imaginary possibilities have no role to play in the instant case. Facts are crucial, so they have to be right and suitable because it is the only thing which shows the clear intention of petitioners. In the case of the Adu Sigda versus Queen Empress, Empress of India versus Pancham, that stated that was the fact discovered by reason of the information and how much of the information was the immediate cause of the fact discovered, and as such as a relevant fact. There is a old lawyer saying which goes, and I quote, if you are strong in law, hammer the law. If you are strong in facts, hammer the facts. And if you are neither on your side, hammer the table. Your Honor, the opposition in this all arguments was hammering the table. And in the last, I leave upon the decision to the Honorable Court and humbly ask a legit question to my lords that today this court, through their decision, will ensure the justice to an innocent people who are wrongfully charged every day in this country, who have lost of all the beliefs in the God, but still in their hearts they have like to hope that the savior of constitution and its people and the court will save them too, or this court is going to deliver such decision that will shatter all the hopes of such people. And then if it's happened, neither is no point convicting the dead man inside. The council seeks permission for the prayer.
Learned prosecutor want to say something before conclusion of the trial?
Your Lordship, we have reserved 1 minute for rebuttal. So, shall we?
Please carry on.
So,
Start.
counsel has few rebuttals. How can my learned counsel make an arbitrary claim that the transfer of case to NI was unlawful when, as per NI Act 2008, Section 6, Clause 4 states that when central government is of opinion that the offence is a scheduled offence and it is a fit case to be investigated by the agency, it shall direct the agency to investigate the said offence. Further, how does the counsel on behalf of the accused defend CDR analysis which shows frequent telephonic conversation between the accused, including Peter and Sohail, which was concluded by the counsel on behalf of the accused that they are accused. They have used the word accused to for Peter and Suhail. So how does they defend the telephonic conversation of Samir and Monu with the accused Peter and Suhail, and also their frequent trip to West Bengal? Further, how does the counsel on behalf of the accused defend the incriminating evidence, that is the sketches of the place where the exchange of FICN took place, which were made on the basis of information given by the Kalu Mama? Further, how does the counsel on behalf of the accused defend the statement made by the witnesses, which clearly indicates the involvement of accused in the criminal conspiracy?
That's all.
Thank you, Your Lordship.
So with the permission of my co-brother, Mr. Madan, we reserve the order on the, we reserve the judgment, and the same shall be let it known to you later on. Can we disperse the court, your court master sir?
Yes, my lord. Yes, my lord.
Any final words from your side? We can disperse it. My co-brother wanted to add anything onto this?
Your Honor, any questions or any query you need to make?
I think we have been asking that constantly along with their time of the arguments. So there are no further queries left. My co-brother would like to ask any queries or the question to the teams. I think he has. Mr. Madan, you want to ask anything to the teams? Am I audible?
Yes, my lord, you are audible.
I think my co-brother is not in a position to hear me. My co-brother, you are not audible. Not audible. See, I have been asking the question.
My lord, I think he is having some headphone issues or something. That's why he is not able to.
So in that case, I think we can reserve the judgment, which will be pronounced later on.
Please, my lord.
So,
Please, my lord.
okay, bye.
Thank you.